Welcome, folks. Today we are doing something different. We are talking to Vilas and Bryan about platform engineering and more specifically the limitations of platform engineering. It has been some time since the article came out about platform engineering and DevOps is dead. And today we're going to try to tackle, is platform engineering dead? Should we really rethink what platform engineering means? So before that, let's start with some introductions. I'm Ankit, founder and CEO of Aviator. We build AI-based developer workflows to automate end-to-end software development lifecycle and improve software delivery for teams. Vilas, please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Vilas. I have spent most of my working life in big companies, so Netflix, Walmart. I spent a little bit of time in fintech, Bill.com, and I'm working at a startup that is in stealth right now. And I have very strong opinions on platform engineering. So thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. All right, Bryan.
Yeah, I'm Bryan Finster. I've been a developer for about 30 years in mostly supply chain space in big companies. And now I work for a startup to do platform engineering for the DoD and specializing really on air-gapped environments, really, water-gapped environments. How do we enable continuous delivery to some really hard delivery contexts?
Amazing. So Vilas and Bryan, you've also worked together, like driving some of the platform initiatives at Walmart. So I would want to maybe even start with like, what is, according to you, platform engineering? I find almost every person I speak with has a different definition. We've spoken with Datadog, where half of their engineering is platform engineering. But like from your perspective, what is platform engineering?
Brian, go first.
Okay, I'll go. For me, how do I help my customers, which are other developers? I'm a developer, developing tools for other developers to make it easier for them to do their jobs. My focus really is delivery platforms, so how I make it easier for them to deliver to their end users. And I think core to that is how do I make it really easy for them to do their work and really difficult to make mistakes? And those two are conflicting things, and that's why platform engineering can be difficult.
I mean, I think Brian speaks from obviously experience that we have both shared. For me, it's all about making sure that you can deliver on time from the customer's perspective. Let's imagine you have amazing ideas that you want to build on, and then you are not able to deliver that for the next year. You've already lost the revenue opportunity. You've lost all of those opportunities to do well. And that is the opposite of what it should be like. It should be enablement for those folks. And so as long as the work involves enabling those developers, then that's what platform teams should do or should focus on. That's where the focus should be.
Interesting. So this term did come up, I feel like, in the last 5 years. Nobody was talking about platform engineering as much before. And there was this whole, era of like, oh, DevOps is dead. And there was engineering enablement, there is development enablement.
Mhm.
There's hundreds of terms being thrown out there, right? Like, is it true that platform engineering is sort of like just reskinning of DevOps, or is there more to it?
Well, so this is always a pet peeve of mine because DevOps is the entire environment that we're working on, right? The definition of DevOps I always use is the union of people, process, and product to enable the continuous delivery of value to our end users. Platform is the product part. So it's a very small subset of DevOps. But as far as the way people commonly use DevOps, yeah, it's one of the definitions people use for DevOps. There's several conflicting definitions that people have tried to narrow DevOps down in one tiny corner that they can assign an engineer to. Yeah, platform engineering is basically a reskinning of that in some contexts, in my opinion.
I think I want to be very mindful of this, right? This is where the marketing cycle hits actual engineering. About 15, 20 years ago, right, when I started work at like a startup, we had a team that used to do what we call platform engineering today, but they used to develop common libraries for all other dev teams to actually use. And the common libraries would have logging, would have like other things that would enable us to like deliver things faster. We were shipping on CDs. We would burn for those who know, they know. But if you don't, unfortunately, go Google. But that's what we were doing. So that was delivery. But to enable that delivery, what we needed were libraries that we weren't duplicating code on. And so there existed that, right? That turned into some form of platform and then became pipelines. So then pipelines required folks to maintain them, babysit them. That's where we unfortunately have the DevOps engineers come in, which is actually a big misuse of the term. But then Then there is like the platform engineering process, which happened over 5, 6 years ago. So in a way, yes, but the problem is it's marketing that makes the difference, the jumps, right? It's not engineering. I mean, we know exactly what we need. That person could be termed anything. We're still going to go to that person or that team. You could call them anything. As long as they're enabling you, helping you, you are going to go to them.
Interesting. So, Vilas, there is also organizations defining developer experience teams, right? Engineering enablement teams, and sort of like, SREs, DevOps. These are still happening in parallel sometimes to platform engineering. Are they all sort of the same things, just different names?
Sorry, go ahead, Bryan.
No, I was going to say, but it depends. This is the problem: is there's so much conference-driven development out there, and you'll find SRE being used for completely different jobs in different organizations. They didn't bother to read the SRE book; they just heard something about SRE and said, "Oh, we're going to have SREs, and they're just going to handle support calls," and that's what they do. And so you can't tell just because they have a label what the job is. But yeah, I've seen like things that should just be a unified role peeled apart into different things. So yeah, if you have developer experience and delivery enablement and they're two different things, that's weird.
I wonder if that was like a zero interstate phenomenon, right? Having all of these different roles defined. But to Bryan's point, it's really important to understand the what here, right? The what is consistently, can we get the delivery or the developer to actually do their work in a much better way? And by the way, I don't mean, and I want to make sure that I call this out, the idea of calling something developer productivity is in itself very flawed, because you're assuming a certain, I don't know, you're sort of squeezing something out of the person kind of thing. It's not what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to give the person tooling. And like I think Bryan mentioned earlier, you're providing those safety rails for them to not mess things up themselves and instead just focus on the job at hand. So they're focused on what they need to deliver, business logic, all of that. And you're reducing their cognitive load, hopefully, and not increasing it. And that's what the focus is. So now to your point about different roles and different titles and all of that, big teams, like big DevX teams, all that, the question I would ask is, are you calculating how your developer's life has actually improved from when you existed? Before you were not there, what did you change? How do you continue to stay funded? What is the reason for your existence? And if the reason for existence is, oh, I need to improve a tooling that I built last year, yeah, that's not enough. Why is that tooling important?
Well, and I think the reason people struggle with platform engineering so much, doing it correctly, is they probably don't. If I were to guess, most people don't do product very well. Like as their external product, they don't do product very well. And if you can't do your external product very well, you've got a no ghost of a chance of doing an internal product well. And it takes a lot of product management and a lot of focus on what are our goals, how are we measuring our success, are we really focused, are we customer focused? And our customers are the teams that we're trying to help. And not just customer focus and are we doing everything they ask, but are we doing customer focus and are we making it easier for them to do their job, that's two different things. But if you're not good at external product, how can you be good at internal product? And so they struggle. And so you come up with all sorts of anti-patterns around platform teams as police, forcing teams. You will.
Oh, yes.
Always be this way. Platform teams is here's a bunch of tools. Good luck. We just support the tools. We don't, we don't know how to use them. We don't.
I love that. Like platform engineering as police is like, it's the best categorization that I've heard, and I agree with that. That's exactly what it becomes. It's the thou shalt not do this police, right? Like, oh no, you cannot use this to deploy. Like, what are you using Jenkins for build? No, you should be using whatever build kite. Like, go do this, change this, even if it works just fine for you. No, you shouldn't be doing this because we said so. Like that is, that's exactly what happens. And here is the thing, right? The incentive here for the platform engineering teams are sometimes misaligned, right? So sometimes you're measured as platform teams sometimes are measured is how much of your tool has been adopted. And you might be forced to be like, no, we created a tool. Now we need to force adoption anyway. Even if the existing teams are just happy with the devil they know, They don't want to change anything. And you're like, no. How long will it take for you to change? What can I incentivize you to do this? You cannot and don't. It's fine. It's working for me. And you
Right.
need to get deeper into that discussion. Right? And that's the thing that they miss, is because you're looking at that surface level metrics to say, oh, are we at 100%? We're not. Okay, then you're not getting a promotion, you're not getting a hike, like all of that stuff.
But see, this is the same with external product, because you're measured on adoption of external product.
100%.
With external product, you actually have to do the real work of convincing people that it's better than what they're using now and getting them to voluntarily use your stuff.
Yep.
And if this is, I think, what we did really well early on with Walmart platform was Jason's drive of, we want them to use us because we're better. So go out there and show them how it's better. Because the last thing you want to do is force people to use your platform, because you're already going to have angry customers when something's broken. You don't want to have angry customers when something's not broken, because it just costs money. It just drives up support costs. They'll find any little thing to niggle on because you force them onto your platform.
I want to bring back something, Ankit, you said. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
I want to bring back something that you just said, which is like teams that have like big engineering platform engineering teams. The question I have, and this is something that I would love to learn, is how does the overall set of priorities look for you? Because I'm assuming if everything is platform engineering and everything is important, then truly nothing is, because everything just becomes mishmash of what needs to happen. And then your priorities are what's going to bubble up is just going to be like a majority needs this, but there could be pain in some areas that are really painful. Like one example I always think about is people saying, hey, have you have a great IDE, like go use Windsurf or use like Cursor or use Copilot or whatever. And then people are like, no, my problem is with the build system. It's not building as fast as I want it to. Like builds are taking 3 hours. I wanted to take 15 minutes. Like, can you solve that? They're like, no, look at these IDEs. They're awesome. And that's a mismatch of priorities, just because it's fully possible someone came in and be like, leadership wants everyone to use AI coding assistants. And that's what is priority. So I would love to understand that, especially for these big platform engineering teams. How do you decide that? Because I think that is where the mismatch happens, which leads to everything else, right? Like what are you incentivized for, and then what do you focus on, adoption versus actual enablement.
Give me 1 second. Somebody's at the door. I don't know why. I have this room, so just give me a second.
No, Jason had like this whole thing created. Okay, anyway, sorry. We're back to recording, and Ankit will edit these parts out.
Yeah, my mistake.
No worries, man.
Somebody had the wrong room.
Okay, and you'll edit out this part.
Yeah, I will edit it out.
Okay, good.
Okay, sorry. What were you talking about? Something useful?
We were just talking about that we didn't realize how good we'd done product management at Walmart platform until we left.
I see.
Yeah.
Nice. We had something else to compare to.
No, he's absolutely right. I think it was incredible, and it was definitely underappreciated at that time. And I see it in a very different light now, especially because there is a lot of that headless, let's just do platform engineering thing, right? Like, no, wait, stop. Like, why are you doing platform engineering? Ask yourself that question. Right. Anyway.
Okay, so going back to Vilas, you were talking about, right? Well, both of you are talking about adoption in general, kind of like how platform engineering teams are pushing for adoption. There is a case to be made around standardization, right? If you have fewer things that you have to support, you can support as platform engineering those things well. So from that perspective, you still want to have push people to use the standard tools, like, this whole idea of like golden path or paved path we talk about all the time, right? That's, I feel, some of the foundation of platform engineering too. So where are we going wrong?
So I mean, to a point, okay. So number one, I used to be a complete libertarian when it came to teams should choose whatever language they want to use. I remember the VP of a platform at Walmart, Tim Kimmett. He schooled me that everything that we support costs money, and so but you need to support good options. You don't just tell people, hey, if you're not using Java, we're not going to support you ever. You need good options. The other thing is, we had a very specific goal when we built out the Walmart platform to enable continuous delivery because we were having a transformation effort based off of use CD. But the platform could be used without using CD. It's just that CD made it easier to use.
Yeah.
Right? And so we still supported, you wanted to do something terrible, but it's just a little bit more toil. But it's still better what you had. It's less toil than what you had. But if you go with the golden path, would be use continuous delivery, and things are a lot easier. But it's striking a balance between supporting enough of what they need to do, and not just tell them you will do it this way because I don't understand your context. You're going to do it with the context I do understand.
Yep. I mean, I will say this. The idea of a platform team or a DevX team or whatever you call it, right? It's the culture of finding a path to yes. Right? If someone comes to you and be like, hey, this is a new language that I just invented myself and I'm going to code all of my stuff in it, find that path towards, okay, try and talk to them, understand exactly why they're doing this. Maybe there's a very good reason why they're doing it, and then start supporting it. I mean, one of the examples that I will share is at Walmart, when Walmart acquired Jet.com. Jet was actually having a lot of code that was in F Sharp. Right? F Sharp is it's a functional language, functional programming language. It's a very unique set of folks who use it, right? And it's very hard to hire in that space. But that was powering a lot of the work that was going on at Jet, right? So the question is, do you not support it? Do you just come in and say, no, we're not going to do this? No, you instead work with them. You find out exactly what their needs are. Where does it not meet the paved path? And then maybe you pave a small thing for them to find that way. Like you find a bridge, right? And that's actually something that platform teams should do more of. If we do feel that that's what if they understand their job well, they should be doing this more. And you're not never going to get like 100% solution. Like you're never going to be like, this fits everyone. Everyone should, and you're never going to say, if you don't use this, like you not be productive. You can still be productive if you don't use a platform. I just want to be very clear about that. Like Bryan said, I would still say you should still be doing CD because that's just sanity. Like if you don't do CD, you're causing problems for yourself. But yeah, if you don't use platform elements and do something else, fine. You still are progressing. Fine.
Right. I think it's also kind of like going into some things we have discussed in our community conversations several times, which is you have a paved path, but you leave some space for off-roading.
Of course.
And this is where kind of like you expect that people who are using additional tools or different tools are probably not going to get the same support, but we might find a better path. We might find a different route, which will help us kind of like redefine some of those standardization for the future.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. It's become I wouldn't say it's become completely taboo, but it has become this thing where people feel like they'll be shamed if they ask that question. Like, hey, I don't want to use this. So you need really strong leaders who can also stand their ground and say why that is important. Like, hey, I'm going off-roading, but I know exactly what the risks are. And let's work together to find those bridges, whatever we need. I mean, one example I can give you is imagine if you are like saying, hey, this is a central orchestration tool we have, let's say something like Spinnaker, and then you'll be like, hey, but I don't use this. I'm actually doing some Kubernetes native stuff. And then Spinnaker will be like, yeah, we'll build out something for you or something like that. Like that's the kind of discussion that should happen in every company, not just with open source software.
Right. It's about that incremental change.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of like just trying to wrap up some of this thought conversation we had. So now I know, Bryan, you mentioned about like, having platform as a product. You've done talks about that before. Maybe one way to think about it is like, how should one define ROI if we are not defining it based on the usage? And how should like platform teams even do planning?
Vilas and I talk about this all the time. We talked about it when we work together. It's because it's so hard to measure the impact you have.
Yeah.
Because utilization, sure, people are using your platform, but are they able to get their jobs done better? And really, I don't know a way to remotely measure it. It's another one of those go to the Gemba sort of situations. Go talk to your customers. I mean, I'm not smart enough. Somebody else might have an answer, but for me, I would go and find out if people are actually, if their job is easier, and if not, how do I tweak it so it is?
Yep.
You have to go do the hard work of product management and go and ask.
Hmm.
First of all, I'll say this, Brian, but I'll say this. I'm very sympathetic to folks who have to provide ROIs for platform, DevX work, all of that. Like I've done that multiple times, and it's not an easy thing to do because a lot of times you're basically coming up with numbers, you're projecting numbers that you're hoping would happen, right? I mean, one of the things that classic things that people do is, oh, we can save you 1,500 hours on like developer hours or something like that. My question is 1,500 developer hours, what are they going to do with it? Like, do you think that that is going to go back directly, or are they going to take a break, do something else? Like, what are you really saying? And it's just a weird measure, right? But I want to be very clear about one thing. There is no ROI defined short term. There is nothing that you can find short term. And developer happiness is very hard to measure. You can do as many surveys as you want, but developer happiness is something that is very hard to measure. What you can measure is profit. What you can measure is customer experience. What you can measure is how many features and how much revenue are you generating from those features. If you're seeing slowdown in that, that is a direct reflection of how you're developing and delivering things, right? It is a unfortunate thing that it's a lagging indicator sometimes, but that's what you have, and that's the reality, as opposed to someone saying, oh, we have amazing, we are a DORA mature organization or elite organization, but then yeah, our customers hate us. Like no one wants what we are putting out to them, or they're waiting 3 months for something that's really of value. Yeah, you're probably not doing it right, right? That's not your main problem. Your problem is something else. Product market fit is your problem, not this. I think that's the thing that I want to say is it's profit is going to dictate all of that other stuff. You can make up stuff for ROI as much as you want, and it's very hard. And I really empathize with people who have to, but you're never going to nail that. Never. It is going to require some leap of faith from your executive sponsor that says, okay, I see what you're saying, and maybe I'll believe you.
Interesting. Have you seen, like, maybe from anecdotal examples from your past, both of you, where platform engineering has succeeded and where they have failed?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, when you're in the middle of something and you don't have anything for context, it's really hard to understand how well you're succeeding. But we did a
Mm-hmm.
really good job at Walmart, and I didn't know it until I left. When you're working for a place like Walmart, where it's got this image of old stodgy brick and mortar, it's not a tech company. Although Walmart, you have to be a tech company to run something like Walmart. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But you don't understand how well you're doing until you left. And then I left and I saw what other people were doing. I was like, oh my God, we were doing it really, really well. I mean,
Yeah.
so well that I spent the time to write the 16,000 word paper on why you should do it the way we did it.
Yeah.
But as far as seeing it done poorly, there was another organization I was working with in the military where they were developing a platform. Their goal was to make it so that an entire branch of the military could use it. They had somebody who was trying to force an entire branch of the military to use it. It only supported Kubernetes. It only supported a microservice infrastructure. Um, their pricing model was based off of how many pipelines you had. So they charged you $10,000 a pipeline, and utilization in production didn't matter. And on top of that, it was platform as a service ticket. So at Walmart, you can just go fiddle around with about 40 lines of YAML and stand up a Kubernetes pipeline to production on your own. Never talk to us. If you had to talk to us, we failed, as far as I was concerned. This other organization I was working with, you had to open a ticket and wait 2 weeks for somebody to for a DevOps engineer to spend 8 hours manually configure a pipeline and then do the back and forth opening tickets for all the defects in the manual generation of pipeline. So, and that was platform engineering.
That's like a paved road. That's like an elevated paved road. That's a 1-lane highway. Like that's it. You're like, in order to get to it, there is a toll. Like, and then right to exit, there
You
is
get
like a
stuck.
jam. Yeah.
You had to push the car.
Right.
There you go. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. That's
So,
yeah, unfortunate.
yeah, I've seen extremes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll reflect on what Brian just said. That the strength of a good platform is only defined by how long it sustains delivery,
Hmm.
right? So we know this. There is still the same bones that we created at Walmart like many years ago that's still running systems across like e-commerce and stores and Sam's Club and international and everything. And I think that's the strength of a good platform is that you don't necessarily realize how effective it would be or how extensible it would be while you're building it. And that's the reason why it's always helpful to look forward and to start saying no to things that are just, I don't know, decorative pieces. Like, oh yeah, can this just do this one thing? And instead of us like 20 teams doing it, can you say no unless it's the absolute generic common thing that is really needed for empowering the team? Everything
Hmm.
else should just be a no. So that's why I think in hindsight, I agree with Brian. Like in hindsight, I do feel that it was a very, very strong product. Um,
Oh, I
so
want
go
to
ahead.
I want to brag on myself a little bit though, because a friend of mine just rejoined that area in Walmart
Mm,
after a 3-year hiatus. He went back, and he told me that the material. So one of the things I talk about all the time is that platforms don't matter if people aren't given the information about how to leverage the capabilities that this platform brings to you. They just don't. And one of the things that we did in the Walmart platform was we stood up a team whose job it was to teach you how to leverage the capabilities of the platform. And I led that team. And we put out a lot of information about everything from just basic agile training through, how to really dig into getting better at continuous delivery and how to use our platform to get that done. That documentation is still the onboarding training for Walmart.
no. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that is awesome.
It's
I didn't realize
embedded
that.
embedded into their internal AI.
Wow. Amazing.
That's amazing. That is amazing staying power. Like, if I may say that, like it's amazing
That's
staying
very
power for
impressive.
something like that. That's fantastic.
Amazing. So I want to move on. Like there is a couple of other big topics I want to
Go for it.
cover. So first is IDP, right? I think even if you ask for full form of IDP, people will have like two different opinions. But I want to understand, like, correlation of IDP with platforms.
Hmm.
Is IDP a critical aspect of the platform, or is it just a big facade, or is it like, it's a blank canvas? You kind of like build everything on top of it yourself. Just kind of like, what do we think about IDPs today?
Well, I mean, everything comes down to definition. To me, internal delivery or developer platform is the portion of the platform that is focused on developers. It's not the hardware, it's not the infrastructure, it's the tools that developers use, which is a subset of the rest of of a. I mean, we were talking earlier that Excel is a platform for the end users. All that anybody who's writing
Hmm.
software is doing is building a platform for somebody else. What's a platform?
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a tool to make somebody else's job easier. So, but an IDP, in my mind, is just the set of tools that makes a developer's job easier.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, um, when you so let's imagine when you travel, right? You've got a car, you basically sit in a car, you go somewhere. That is what allows you to go on the road, right? Like I look at that as that, right? It's a developer self-service tool.
Hmm.
That's how I think about it. My definition of an internal developer portal is actually much smaller than what gets marketed today. Like what gets marketed today is a little bit of that. Hey, we can do everything with it. Like you can do service registry and you can do this and that and score people and everything. Mine is actually much smaller. It's a helper tool almost for the developer. It's a self-service tool. So the developer comes in, they have questions, they need access to documentation, helper tools, things like that, so that they can get their application running off the ground. If there's an existing application, they know exactly where to find help for it. They know if they know they are on call. They need to know documentation that connects them to playbooks, stuff like that. That's it.
Hmm.
Everything else is gravy.
Interesting.
But yeah.
So I know like a lot of companies that we speak with also struggle with adopting, right? Like, people talk about, oh, Backstage, cool. Like, weekend hackathon, we're going to set up Backstage and everyone is going to come and use it. And,
Mhm.
we'll be a champion in the platform team. Where do they go wrong? Like, why are they like, I mean, a year down, they'll just like go and, nobody's using it. Let's shut it down. It's too much to
But
maintain. There's
see,
like
we
so many
come
vulnerabilities.
back to the same topic, which is product management. I can build. I mean, even Angry Birds needed marketing, right? You've got to let people know that you have a thing and that the thing is useful to them in this way, and it's more useful than the thing that they have now, and it's worth the effort of learning your new thing because it'll be easier for them to do their jobs or easier. It solves some other problem that they're not getting solved today. You have to go do the marketing.
Yep.
Even internally, you have to market. We had
Right.
T-shirts and stickers and lunch and learns and all sorts of. We'd have tables set up and
Yeah.
internal, show and tell things and
Yep.
everything to explain to people why you really wanted to use our stuff.
I think that's something important that Brian just mentioned, and that's the transparency of that environment, right? So when we were part of that platform unit, one thing was that we were very transparent with our intentions. We were very open to feedback, and we were part of the community. We didn't exist in an ivory tower separately. We weren't sitting there spewing instructions to everyone. We were actually practitioners who were in the middle of the thick of things. And when there was feedback given to us, like, hey, this is not important, like, we don't care about this, we used to take that feedback, contextualize that feedback, prioritize and reprioritize based on that. And so our priorities were never hidden behind something. It was like completely open. Everyone knew exactly what we were talking about, what we were working on. And that level of transparency also inspires a certain level of confidence. So marketing, not just by marketing, but like actually being present, that's what those show and tells were about. That's what the transparent, here is what we did, like tell us where we are bad or not good, and responding to that. That's essentially where the key thing was, right? Like the win was. So going back to your point about IDP and like why people think about like let's do a hackathon and all that, and then get everyone on board. Why doesn't it work? It's because the incentive is wrong. The incentive is not that everyone gets on IDP so it's work done. There is a bigger incentive. The bigger incentive is sometimes unclear to people, most people, right? And that's where I have a challenge that platform engineering becomes this cocoon where everyone is like, no, no, don't tell everyone what we're doing. Just tell them what they need to know, and then we'll take care of it. Right? And that's where it is. So we have to break that apart, and that's the reason why I am very against calling something platform engineering. That yes, there is a platform. Everything is a platform, like Brian said, right? I mean, we have discussed this, like a chair and a table, right? Like a desk and a chair that you use to put your laptop and start coding. That's a platform, right? I mean,
Yeah, I don't own
are we going to,
a
yeah,
all the.
yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. I think we
Right.
need to make maybe clear like what that is and how does that incentivize people. So that incentive is missing, and that's why people just
Right.
do it for the sake of doing it.
Right. I think just connecting the dots there, one of the things I notice where generally like these kind of like backstage, right? This is a common popular IDP open source. Many companies fail to adopt, even though it's like very popular in Spotify. Companies fail to adopt because they're like, oh, backstage, this will solve our problems, right? I think they hard to even struggle to even articulate what problems they're looking to solve, and struggle to kind of like really even define what use cases are we going to solve for the developers using it,
Yep.
right?
Well,
I
yeah,
think just
Backstage,
kind of
by the
like
way, yeah. By the way, Backstage
good.
did solve a very important problem for Spotify, right? It gave
Mhm.
Spotify, it was created because it solved a very specific problem for Spotify. And that's really the key thing to remember, right? And everyone else who's using it is thinking they have the same problems as Spotify. Maybe it's not true.
Right.
but not only that, but Backstage is the user interface.
Right.
You,
Yeah,
you
there is a
know,
back end. Exactly. There is a, yeah,
It's a canvas, right? It's a empty canvas.
still, yeah, I mean, you still have to. It's like using Power BI or something. You still have to know what to measure and what to visualize. How you're going to be. You have to know what and why of the product that you're going to then provide a
yeah,
user interface.
Right.
I
correct.
mean, I was telling you earlier that the user interface that we had at Walmart was GitHub and Slack. I mean, we just use the tools the developers were already using to do their
Right.
jobs to talk to the developers because why would we make them go somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a good point because like you also have like limited cognitive memory for developers. You don't want to introduce new experiences, new interfaces, which also kind of like distributes
I mean,
their
I've got to remember to open up the Chrome
cognitive
tab
load.
for Backstage and stick it over here in a window, bring another monitor so I can keep Backstage. No.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
That's so I'm going to segue into something I'm sure Ankit you're also thinking of, which is this is why I think those AI code editors with like inline stuff is actually helping developers. That's why the adoption is so good, is because it's happening in their workflow, in the
Right.
IDE, right?
Right.
You're bringing all of those, the goodness of like, give me common libraries or like build out common libraries or add this logging module for me, whatever. It's happening in line. They don't need to step away from their existing work and go do something else somewhere else.
Right. This is actually like also, yes, one of the topics I do want to discuss, which is
Yeah.
obviously, how is AI changing platform engineering? What is going to look like? Like, what is platform going to look like in the future? What do these teams going to look like? How does the user experience going to look like? I don't know. Brian, you want to
Brian?
start?
So number one, they're just another kind of tool. They're just another kind of tool. But as soon as you naively apply them, you're going to get all sorts of problems. Number one, if you don't teach people if you're doing AI assisted development, if you're doing it well, it's a different workflow from how most people do development. Get good at test driven development.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do test driven development. Even better, you need to do behavior driven development. But the other thing is, it brings in a whole other swath of security problems you have to worry about. Martin Fowler had a really good article the other day about people doing supply chain attacks on the common rules file. So if you've got like the default rules that gets applied, and people doing supply chain attack and injecting malicious rules. You've got to worry about the life cycle of information in an LLM. So if you've got a documentation LLM, what's your information life cycle look like? And you've got to learn all of these things to make. You can't just go, hey, look, here's AI, enjoy. It's a whole other set of maintenance and security things that you have to look into, but worth it. I can guarantee you that you can't replace engineers with AI. What you can do is replace engineer toil with AI.
That's
Yep.
interesting.
I mean, I think Brian said it really well. AI is not something that is going to change the need for critical thinking. You still need to, there's still that added thing of saying, oh, yeah, this is how I'm going to do this work, or here is what I'm going to accept as input, and here is what I'm going to use to create a production ready, enterprise grade software, right? There is that human piece that's going to exist. But knowing how to use AI is a massive jump. I mean, I've used it for my own use cases, and I mean, I don't think I can go back to the time when I'm not using it, because I feel very strongly about I'm learning something every time I'm using it. I'm learning something, and that's the other thing, right? I mean, even for the user, if you are looking at it as I'm just going to do this and never going to look at what it created, that's a problem, because you're not really gaining anything from the usage. You need to be able to gain something valuable from it and then bring your critical thinking to it, saying, oh yeah, I accept this, but I don't accept this. There is a little bit of that. Just like Brian said, it's a tool, use it as that, right? And I completely agree with the idea of having behavior driven development or test driven development to ensure that you are not just sending random stuff to production. That's all. I mean, by the way, this is not an AI specific thing. I just want to say this has been happening for years, right? So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so one thing that I will say is I am trying to understand more on the AI assisted code changes and the engineer driven code changes or piece. There is a lot of interesting data that might be useful to sort of collect and find. So if there is other folks who are doing this, I would love to hear more from like how they are seeing the difference in these two, right? Like are pipelines catching more issues earlier with like AI assisted ones, or maybe they're better quality. I don't know. So that's something that I am very curious to know, because they probably can write their own tests, or you can at least create unit testing and system level testing with AI for some of those modules. So Just curious, but that's where it is.
Very cool.
The challenge with that, Vilas, is there's already been a study that showed that people using like Copilot wouldn't see any sort of increase in productivity or in any relevant metrics. But my question is why? Why not? How much training did you give them? How much
Yeah,
focus did you give them
yeah.
on the workflow required to get the best out of this tool?
Right. I do want to zoom out on this a little bit because I
Hmm.
think one of the things which Brian mentioned is, fundamentally how people write code with AI is different than how we used to write code before, which essentially means is like, there's gonna be uh, further like, ripple effects of this in organizations, how they operate,
Yeah.
right? For instance, some of the things we're seeing is like teams are shrinking. There's a lot more
Mm.
responsibility for smaller teams, right? And I do expect like there's going to be people who are moving from one project to another more frequently, because kind of like how these projects and work is operated. The other part is like how much stress is this going to put on our platforms, right? Are we going to run more CI systems? Like, do we need better performing tests? Because now if you have like thousands of tests which are, or millions of tests which are generated with AI, do we want to run all of them, right? Like, do the systems need to get smarter? And there are other parts
Let,
of it which is if you have like systems which are flaky now because of the volumes of code generated, these things are going to start like showing cracks, because like even a small percentage of flakiness is now going to cause a lot more
mhm.
impact down the platform.
I I am going to challenge you to think about replacing the word AI with junior engineer. I
Okay.
mean, let's imagine I hired like 10 people who are just fresh out of college, making them work on a code base that is like enterprise grade, very critical, maybe does financial transactions. Um, we would have the exact questions that you just described.
Well, there is
Well,
one difference though, because you'll have like now not 10 junior engineers but like 1,000 junior engineers.
yeah, but I think I'd also like to challenge the we're going to have a whole bunch more tests than we had before. No, you're going to have if you are doing the coding correctly, you're going to have exactly the same number of tests that you should have had before, right?
Hmm.
If you're just generating a whole bunch of tests to generate tests, then you get what you
Yeah,
deserve. If you weren't testing enough, then you get what you
yeah,
deserve. You should have had that number of tests anyway. And it's
Right.
not dramatically more in my experience. I mean, my experience is, I one time measured a project I was working on with. I thought we were testing really well, although now I would test better. And we had like 5 times the amount of test code that we had application code. I like counting the lines of code, right? And that seemed reasonable to me.
Hmm.
Um, and so I don't think there's a lot of impact there. I don't.
yeah.
I think the prediction I have, and I wrote a LinkedIn thing about this the other day, was that what I expect will happen is on organizations where people are actually learning how to use the tool and are actually doing the workflow correctly, that they'll discover that developer productivity never was about coding. The problem was always the inflow of information and how clean that information was into the developers,
Hmm.
right? Because if you quickly, that was the first thing we had. If you know how to do continuous delivery well, you'll do very well working with an AI assistant, because the same exact skills. Do I
Yep.
have testable acceptance criteria that I can then transform into test code that I can then use to write my application code? And if I don't have clean information, I can't get testable acceptance criteria. So I'm blocked. And so the problem has always been the bureaucracy downstream of coding and the lack of clear information upstream of coding. It's never been about developer productivity.
Yep. It's
It's
actually
just,
it's
you
actually
find
forcing everyone to, yeah, it's forcing everyone to have that exact discussion is, wait, why can't I do this without a developer? Because guess what? You need human beings to understand the gap in requirements that are created. Like, requirements are not perfect, and so we have a gap there. We probably have a gap in understanding what the customer needs, and then we have probably bureaucracy in how we are rolling this out and features and stuff like that, right? So it's forcing that discussion right now, and that is why I mentioned it. Even if it's like 1,000 junior developers, whatever, like, think about that as, if you don't have a good CI system today, AI is not magically going to fix that, right? So just want to be clear, like, AI does fix a lot of the, hey, I have an idea, I need to get to the point of like having something seen so I can utilize that idea and like actually push it to production. You will get help there. If you're smart enough and you already have CI, you're going to be way faster than others.
Amazing. So I think we're at time now. Let's maybe kind of like end with possibly some predictions if folks have. Like, how would we think platform engineering would look like in 5 years? Any of you folks have any predictions you want to share?
I mean, my prediction is it'll be exactly the same it is now. You'll have some people who really focus or are customer focused, who are enabling delivery. You know, like Vilas and I like delivery enablement. Our job is to enable delivery. How can we help you get your job done? And then you'll have people who are still just throwing tools at developers or telling developers that you have to conform to how the platform wants you to work. It'll be exactly. It's just the tools will change, but the attitude people don't change.
So you're saying, Bryan, you don't think all of the platform engineering certifications will help anyone? Like there's so many.
Yeah. We should absolutely be certified in something that's constantly changing because
Yeah. So that's exactly what. By the way, just to be clear, my opinion on this is, if you are certifying yourself on platform engineering, you're missing the point. You're missing the point that platform engineering is not for its own sake. It's always for the sake of getting someone else's life to be better.
Users.
Yes, and I think that's the reason why this is a favorite topic of me and Bryan, and we talk about it separately. But to answer your question about prediction, I think my prediction is that it will morph as it has in the last 10 years. It has morphed in many different ways to something that is going to be called maybe a sexier new name. I don't know. Put an AI in there or something like that. It'll probably happen. But to go back to the original thing we started talking about, it is no different from what it has always been for the last so many years. It's going to be the same thing. You'll always have the same person you go to or the same set of people that you go to. The tooling will improve because obviously AI is going to start getting used more often, I hope, by people who really know what to do with it. And then that is essentially going to result in a lot of evolution. But I fear, even though I don't want it to happen, I fear that platform engineering will exist as a term till the point where someone realizes this is just, it's a bit of empty promises. It's really about delivery enablement.
Amazing. Okay, on that note, thank you, Vilas and Bryan. This was an amazing conversation. And for all the listeners, if you are interested in joining some of these conversations, we do run virtual sessions. Join us on dx.community. Hang at DX. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay.